Welcome back to another episode of the Latinx Business Podcast Show. Joining us today on the show is Donald Jones, the Chief Growth Officer at NextStreet. Donald is the driving force behind a firm that supports over 125,000 small businesses every single year. He helps them unlock more than 50 million in capital and new revenue on a yearly basis. He works within small businesses from LA, New York, Houston, and even smaller markets like Buffalo and Dayton. He spearheads the coalitions and digital tools that give entrepreneurs a real shot at growth. Before NextStreet, Donald served as the executive director at the New York City Department of Small Business Services. He holds a master's in public administration from Columbia University and a bachelor's in political science from Duke. Please help me in welcoming Donald into the show today. Hey, Donald, thanks for coming on to the Latinx Business Podcast Show.
Thank you for having me.
I know that you are super, super busy, so I'm very appreciative of your time today. But yeah, tell me a little bit about yourself. Who's Donald Jones and why Latinx business owners should know who you are and what messaging you're trying to get out there today?
Absolutely. Well, it's just a pleasure to meet you, Randy.
Of course, thanks.
I
Same.
always welcome the time to talk to other small business owners and, impart all of the wisdom that I think I have that I think is helpful as small businesses are navigating the economy, navigating their neighborhoods, markets, regulations,
hmm
and what are the things that they need to be successful. So just really
Yeah.
grateful for the opportunity to talk to you today. Um, as you said, my name is Donald. Full name is Donald Jones. I am the Chief Business and Growth Officer at NextStreet. NextStreet is a small business solutions firm, and the best way I like to describe us is that we really help our clients help small businesses by removing barriers and obstacles to their success. And so we do this by through our proprietary technology, our national networks, and our industry expertise. And
Yeah.
ultimately, we work with government agencies and foundations and city and government agencies, foundations, and corporations to help propel small businesses that are in their communities and in their supply chains.
Nice. Yes.
Yeah.
You are on the ground. I feel you're in the battlefield. I also work with small businesses. As I mentioned earlier, it's tax season right now. And I also, do taxes and bookkeeping. So I feel like you are a great asset also to the show because my main goal here in terms of the show is to get this information out to other business owners, right? Small business owners, small businesses, meaning it could be like a 20, 30-person company or $5 million company or a $10 million company, but small business by all means. But yeah, let's get into a couple of housekeeping questions.
Yeah.
So, first one is what is your preferred pronoun?
He, him.
And then, in terms of your background, how did you end up in this position that you are? Just give us maybe like a minute or two about how you became the chief officer.
Appreciate that. Yeah, but so before I got this title of Chief Business and Growth Officer at NextStreet, it really starts with my exposure to entrepreneurship at an early age. I'm from Chicago originally,
Yeah.
and I got to see two people who were important to me growing up. My aunt and my uncle both
Okay.
had their own small businesses. One was a home alarm system. So this is pre ADT and Ring cameras. So
Yeah.
I'm probably showing how old I am there. And then my aunt was a cake baker, and so she
Baker.
was the kind of cake lady in the neighborhood. And it was, both of them, while their businesses were really different, I think I got to see kind of the reward that they personally felt by starting their own thing and their own enterprise, but
Yeah.
also the challenges that they face. I think the first is, I don't know if you ever talked to them if they would call themselves an entrepreneur. They were generating income for their families.
Right.
So that's the first, is just kind
Yeah.
of not having that identity, I think, as an entrepreneur. And then the second was really just around the lack of access to resources and the support that you need to get to the next level, right? And so when I thought about what I
Yeah.
wanted to do for a living, it was really, how do I help people kind of reach their full potential through services, programs, supports that I can use my work to enable and unlock for small businesses and entrepreneurs. And so that has really guided my entire career. I started in a nonprofit working in small business, workforce development, moved to city government, working in the city of New York, managing the city's network of small business
Hmm.
resource centers, and then have been with Next Street for 13 years, leading a lot of our on the ground programs. But what's been also great is like working also at the systems level, connecting, building networks of organizations like the LA Latino Chamber of Commerce, which is how I got to know you, to really connect with other organizations around a shared set of goals to support small businesses.
Wow, that's awesome. I feel like people or small business owners that I work with should be reaching out to you, right? Because
Absolutely.
part of my work, day in and day out, when I talk to entrepreneurs, I mean, I'm not just having one conversation with them throughout the year. I might be meeting with them 3, 4 times a year, right? Because things come up. And every business has a different stage. So freelancers that transition over to incorporated entities, and it's the first time they're dealing with the tax return for the business separate from the personal. There's a lot of emotions, right? So, and there's not only is there a lot of emotions, but there's also a lot of compliance items that entrepreneurs are now starting to deal with that are new to them. So I feel like I guide a lot of individuals that way too, but they also still need help with like other stuff, like, getting contracts or like getting resources from the cities or the counties or, wherever they're at. But I feel like my day-to-day job, aside from preparing the tax returns and the books for clients, is really to like educate the business owner. Also, I'm a little selfish. It makes my job a little bit easier, right? If I'm like, you need to
Sure.
know what you're doing, because I have a ton of like artists and like actresses and very artsy individuals that start businesses that are my clients, but they come to me and they're like, I hate numbers or I can't deal with numbers. But once they start working with me, I'm like, it's fine, it's easy. It's like, you just gotta get a hold of things, a
Yeah.
grasp of how everything works. So I like working with those individuals, but I know sometimes that could be a little bit harder too, because I need to show them or be like, you need to shift your mindset at that point, right?
Yeah,
Um,
you're good at the craft of what you do, but that's different, right, than being
mhm.
good at operating like a business, right? And I
Yeah.
kind of so you're help bridge builder to like bridging that gap for them. That's great.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, I mean, I like that. I like working with individuals a lot, especially business owners, and guiding them. I think that like that brings me a lot of satisfaction and joy as well. But yeah, I mean, if just to give you a little bit about my background, growing up, I didn't really have like family that was like entrepreneurial, right? A lot of my family members or uncles or aunts or distant cousins that are entrepreneurial live in Mexico, right? So growing up here in East LA, I was like, I don't know. I've always had a drive to be like in business or management, or I always knew I was going to be in this work, right? But then when I went to school, yeah, I ended up going to like a liberal arts college and they don't really promote much business there. So, but again, that's also product of my environment. Like, I needed to go to the school that gave me the most scholarships at that point, right? But yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that. Chicago's great. I actually went to Chicago for the first time last year.
Oh,
So I might go back this year. But funny enough, it was for the IRS conference that I go to every year. So the
whatever gets you
conference,
there. I love my
yeah,
city.
yeah, yeah. No, Chicago's beautiful. I think I have a bad perception because I went in the summer, so I'm like, this is great.
Oh yeah,
This is
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah,
We get you there in January and see if you still love it. But it's still
I'm born
lovely. It's still
born
lovely.
and
I
raised
can
in
tell.
LA. I know. I bet it is. Yes, I know. I do like the cold weather, but LA
That's a
person
whole
through
other
and
level of
through.
cold.
Yeah, yeah. That's another monster. But tell me, Donald, for listeners who are hearing about the Get in the Game at Lay. Why was it created, and specifically with major global events like the World Cup and the Olympics in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I love talking about getting the game. So thank you for
Yeah.
asking and giving us a chance to chat about it. So getting the game really started because we when LA won the Olympics, also what was happening were a few other kind of catalytic events happening in the economy. So LA, but the state of California specifically had received a lot of the Biden Infrastructure Act dollars. There were climate investments. So there was just a wave of regional investments that were happening, including culminating with the LA winning the Olympics. And
Mm.
so Get in the Game was born out of how do we bring the region together, build a coalition of community organizations, business leaders, corporations, foundations, the philanthropic sector, government entities together around a shared goal of how do we get small and local businesses ready to compete for and win contracts related to
Yeah.
um, those events. And so we focused in on the Olympics, so hence the title Get in the Game. But it's
Yeah.
not just a nod to global games, it's also just a nod to how do you be competitive in this shifting and evolving economy. And again, seizing the opportunities that were going to flow through the region over the next, several years. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
so that was sort of the original idea, and how it got started was there were four founding partners of Get in the Game, and I really want to highlight those four partners because they've been just instrumental in the success. The first
Yeah.
is the Los Angeles area Chamber of Commerce. The second is LISC LA. The third is Vermont Slauson, and of course, ourselves, Next Street. And
Mm.
we really have, we were really responsible for taking that vision that as the coalition of organizations kind of came together to define and bring it to reality. And so we sort of built out
Yeah.
what is the programmatic concept of Get in the Game, what was it going to offer, and how do we bring the right set of partners and stakeholders to the table to launch it and to sustain it. And so I'm really proud to share, we've been up and running in an official capacity for the last 2 years. But again, this concept really started, 7 years ago from work just around like how do we
Wow.
prepare
Yeah.
the region for all of this catalytic opportunity.
Yeah, I know. I did go on the website and I was checking it out, and I think one of the things that stood out to me right away is like, you can sign up with you guys, right? And then you can get like mentorship and stuff like that. So, do you want to talk a little bit about how that works? And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. So the signature thing that we do for Get in the Game that is really going to help businesses access, and it's about $11 billion in procurement that's estimated to flow through
that's
related to
huge.
the Olympics. But you also have the World Cup this year, and that's about $3 billion of contract opportunities. And so one of the things that we did was launch the Get in the Game LA Supplier Resource Hub. So that officially launched May 8th of last year, and does exactly what you talked about, which is creating a digital front door, if you will, to
Yeah.
access a network of services. So if you are a small business, you go to getinthegamela.com and you create an account. In that account, when you create the account, you give a brief profile of who you are as a business owner, what your goals are, what your needs are, and then based on what you complete in your profile, you get matched to several different services. So one of
Yeah.
them being one-on-one advice. So you can meet one-on-one with an advisor like Randy, like yourself, who can advise on taxes, but there are other experts in marketing and financial management, and strategic planning, etc. So depending on what your needs
Got it.
are, you get matched to an advisor. You also can do those self-guided learning. So there are online courses that you can
Okay.
take that are free of charge, and so those can cover the broad range of topics to really improve your business acumen. Again, around those core pain points of any business strategy, finance, marketing, sales, etc. So and then lastly, you can access events. So all of the events, we've got about 20 plus partner organizations that are on the Get in the Game Supplier Resource Hub. And so you can find out about those events. And those events are networking events, but also additional courses. So it really just depends on your need, and the algorithm in the hub will match you to those events. And you can connect with those partners in that way. And so Get in the Game is really
Okay.
about making sure local businesses, not just big firms, get to participate in the billions of dollars flowing through the region over the next few years.
Okay, yeah, that's really important. I was gonna say, so like in terms of your videos that you can watch, is it like self-certifications people are completing for the business itself, or is it just like more guidance as a self-paced module type of thing?
Yeah, so it's self-guided learning, so you can start and
Okay.
stop however you choose. There are sort of quizzes that as you go through it that test the learning that you're going through. So
Yeah.
if you're taking a course in marketing, there are learning checks, we call them, or knowledge checks, excuse me. that test the knowledge that you've just learned, but you can start and stop it at your own pace. And what is really great about the online courses is that it's content developed by small businesses for small businesses. So I don't know if you've ever taken, some of the workshops
Mm,
that might be offered, but sometimes they can be a bit more academic. Sometimes they can be really only relevant for larger companies. So what's
right.
great about ours is that it really is focused and grounded on what does the small business need to know.
Okay, nice. Yeah, and I asked, right, because I'm like, is it a certification that people need to be part or to be able to compete to get these contracts or these opportunities? Because I'm like, oh, right, you kind of would want to register sooner than later because things are already happening, right? The World
Yeah,
Cup is here, and the Olympics is going to come in a couple of years. So I feel
yeah.
like it's around the corner.
It is absolutely around the corner. And so now is the time. I mean, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. So the courses are about really knowledge building and getting you ready and building awareness and getting you information that you need to then follow the steps to get positioned for those contract opportunities. So one of the
Mm,
things you can do is go through the certification process. So if you are eligible for the various certifications that are available, I highly at the city, the county, the state level, I would highly encourage business owners to explore that. It is a
right.
very daunting process. What we hope is through the advisors, through the courses, it demystifies for small businesses what the process is and sort of why the steps are in place. But once you kind of go through that rigor, you have been vetted. I
Right.
think that really positions you well to then move into that contracting arena, either as a prime contractor or as a subcontractor. So you absolutely can get certified through signing up on the website. And what I mean by that is getting to the an advisor or the courses or the organizations that can then walk
Right.
you through that certification process.
Ah, okay. So let me ask you this question then. What's the biggest misconception small Latino businesses have about competing for these contracts? I mean, you're talking about world stages here, right? You're talking about the Olympics, the World Cup, and I'm like, oh man, like my mom sells salsa on the weekends to people that come by and pick it up from her, right? And stuff like that. What's the biggest misconception a small Latino business might have at the moment about being able to
Absolutely.
get one?
For sure. Well, the main misconception is that the contracts and all of the economic opportunity that is going to flow through the region is just for large companies. That is not true,
Got it. Yeah.
right? So small businesses can compete, and I think it's really about how do you understand what the requirements are, and it's not a straightforward process when you're doing kind of contracting at this level. It is even for ourselves as a small business, which Next Street is. We
Yeah.
sometimes are having to double check what the requirements are, and so it's important to educate yourself now on what do you need to be eligible to bid as a prime versus maybe a subcontractor route is more appropriate given your size and scale of your business. The second
Mm,
is
yeah.
even though it is about a procurement process, you need relationships. People need to know who you are. And so the hub can get you to events where buyers who are purchasing goods and services from small businesses of all sizes and across all industries in the same room with small businesses. And so I would make
Okay.
sure you are building out your network. And then the third thing is something that is getting more sort of traction and attention, and that I'm particularly excited about, which is yes, there are those large contracts that are going to happen in the venues, right? That they're going to use large national, maybe sometimes international firms to procure certain types of goods
Right.
and services, but there is also a lot of opportunity happening at the local level. And so I'll give you an example.
Okay. Yeah.
The World Cup is happening in June. There will be watch parties all around the city of LA, right?
Yes.
And so, how do you work with your local, merchant association, your community board, to find out, what are local things that you are going like what's happening in the neighborhood, so that you can plug into those opportunities to maybe officially host a FIFA World Cup watch party if you're a bar
Yeah.
or restaurant, or in the case of your mother, providing special salsa for one of the bars or restaurants that are going to host an official watch party. There are a flow of visitors from all over the world coming through the region, finding out where they are going to stay. So there are official delegations from all of the various countries that are staying in parts of LA, and those they are already reaching agreements. So finding out from the hotels or from, again, the various merchants or tourist associations where those things will be, and brokering your own, your own kind of revenue or contract opportunities as a result of that. Now, the hope is that things like that Get in the Game the Get in the Game Supplier Resource Hub,
Hmm.
that will reduce the number of doors you need to knock on to find out what those things are. And so it's great organizations like the
Mm,
LA
got
Latino
it.
Chamber of Commerce that can they have their fingers on the pulse of all of those things, right? And so that's what I mean by like thinking outside of the venue, because there's a lot more opportunity there for small and local businesses. Secondly, diversifying the relationships you have, with not just other small business owners, but those organizations that really are there to provide support and be a connector. And then lastly, really, when you do want to pursue things within the venue, how do you educate yourself on the actual process?
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's big because I was gonna say, like, so you hear big opportunities for like construction firms or, big businesses, and what about like service individuals or vendors or creatives? Is there any contracts like for individuals that are not necessarily providing a physical service or a physical good they're selling? Because that I do work with a lot of like solo entrepreneurs. So that's just one of the questions that came to me.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think that that's another myth, right? That the contracts are
Okay.
just for construction and kind of construction related industries. And in fact, what's great and what made LA so attractive, I think, to be selected as a host city for, both the World Cup, but also for the Olympics is there are not a lot of new builds that are happening, right? There's a retrofitting of existing stadiums, et cetera. So actually
Yeah.
the reason I raise that is that that means that procurement actually is going to happen large, like a lot of opportunity outside of construction is actually really where you're going to see more need
Mm,
that has not yet been fulfilled, right? Because they're not doing a bunch of, like most host cities that host the Olympics. There's lots of construction, lots of building. That's not really happening as much in LA. There's reconfiguring of existing spaces, and so there are, the firms that are equipped to do that. But the outside of that, there's a whole range of things from marketing, for tech, for catering, creative vendors, and professional services. And so I would say many of those will be more subcontracting opportunities. And so I
got it.
think,
Yeah.
being on the lookout for like who are those larger primes, those larger firms, and they're not necessarily like the large multinational or national corporations, but just larger in like
Yeah.
in size. And that's why kind of getting in that Get in the Game network, being a part of those organizations, when I say getting buyers and suppliers in the same room, that is one of the ways that you will have a strategic advantage through that sort of relationship building time. The second thing I will say is, particularly in the realm of like the creative side of things, one of the things that our partners have really shared is that a lot of those contracts don't happen far in advance, right? Like they're not going to the opening ceremonies. There may be a blueprint of generally what they want to happen, right? Production wise, if you're in the production realm, but like
Yeah.
the actual move to setting up the production and like doing that kind of official design is going to come a few months beforehand, right? And so I would also just say people still have some time,
Yeah.
like unlike construction that you have to do years out in advance. Some of the things around hospitality, marketing, event production, some of the more creative professional services focused activities, those won't get procured until a few months before I think the games are set to start.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So yeah, those probably, if you're creative and you're trying to, obviously like for opening ceremonies, there's always like choreography and stuff like that. Like, I'm just trying to think of like the,
No, absolutely, that's
what
exactly right.
needs would be needed. I guess you don't choreograph something like 2 years in advance, So, okay. But then, just like you said earlier, being part of Get in the Game Supplier Diversity Hub and getting to these events and meeting these bigger,
Prime contractors, yeah.
the prime contractors, yes. So then, and then, that's why you mentioned earlier, they need to know who you are. Because if they don't know who you are, then they're not going to reach out to you for those opportunities that will come, right?
Absolutely.
So, no, that makes perfect sense to me now. If a business owner is listening right now wondering, am I ready to take on a contract? What is three things they should assess within their own business
Yeah.
to see if they're
um
ready?
Well, I would say before I get to like the three things that they should obsess, I think
Hmm.
it's important to really do an honest assessment of where you are, right? And sometimes you need to validate that outside of yourself and your team, and maybe with a mentor, with a coach, with an advisor, but really starting with the facts of where is your business is going to be really important. And so the three things that I often tell businesses you need to think about is first is capacity. So can you
Mhm.
deliver at scale for the contract size, right? So we in our work with small businesses, we constantly say, the biggest risk is is not being ready, if you were awarded the contract. So wonderful if you take, you win $1 million contract, but if you don't have the infrastructure and things in your business in place or the foundation to build on that, like you're expected to perform on that contract as if you are ready on day one. And so really
Right.
understand where are you. And so if you aren't at a scale where you can take on $1 million of work, that might be an opportunity to partner. That's where that honest assessment. So it doesn't mean you don't do it. It just means like, oh, you can't go it alone. So really understanding like where you can deliver at scale. And the best way to do that is what have you done before, right? What have been the size of your contracts before? What's been the level of the scope of work that you performed before? Compare that to what the opportunities are, and then really do that assessment of like, can you, deliver at the scale that's required. The next is compliance and documentation. So really making sure you've got your licenses and registrations all up to date, that your insurance is up to date. Insurance is a huge, huge, huge barrier, but also
Really?
opportunity.
Okay. Yeah.
You're dealing with global high profile events. So the level of insurance that you need, particularly as a prime contractor, is probably much higher than maybe the standard general liability that a business has of $1 million. It may be 10, it may be 20. It's going to vary. That's part of when I talked before about
Right.
educating yourself on what is that level of insurance that you need and can you afford that level of coverage, because that is usually a non-negotiable
Mm.
for these larger entities. And similarly, as a subcontractor, you want to know what that level of insurance you need to be a sub too. So those are the kinds of conversations you need to have. And then finally, the third thing is your network. Do you know buyers? Do you know prime contractors, mentors that can help you navigate the process? And then if you win the contract, help you navigate sort of delivering on that contract. So being ready is about knowing that the opportunity exists. It's not just about winning the opportunity either. It's about making sure that your business can confidently deliver when
Deliver.
the contract is awarded.
Got it. Yeah, that's really important because I feel like people out there might be like, "Oh, we don't get these deals or these contracts," but I mean, are you really prepared to take them on, right? Because there's such huge events as well. Okay, so let me switch over to what is this one? You've helped thousands of businesses access capital and procurement opportunities. Where do most entrepreneurs fall short in getting access or executing once the door is open?
Well, I would say both, but I think preparation helps close the gap between the two. So I think,
Mhm.
some businesses don't know how or where to access contracts. And so the hub hopefully can help guide you to the right places to know what those opportunities are. I think others struggle to execute once awarded, often due to a capacity or process gap. And then, I would say also understanding based on these contract opportunities, etc. What are the capital and funding, the level of funding, the type of funding that you need that gives you the flexibility to deliver against those the
Mm.
requirements in the contract. So the challenge isn't about just getting in the door. It's about making sure you've got the funding and the funding flexibility to deliver when the opportunity comes.
Okay. I have, so in terms of like getting a contract, is there concerns about upfront fees if you're awarded one of these, like, payment and money capital you need to have invested before? Because I mean, payment doesn't happen right away, right? You gotta perform to get paid. So yeah, I guess how have you seen business owners deal with that situation?
Yeah. So I think a few things, right? I think, planning ahead is going to be really important. Look, there's a certain reality when you're contracting at a certain level that is complex. And so because of that complexity, sort of straightforward payment processes is not a part of the journey. And
Yeah.
so, you should build into your planning delays, at least in those initial payments as you're getting the contract completely registered or signed off on and
Yeah.
executed, that you've got the capital to float to cover some of the upfront costs, or that you've gone to a capital provider in advance and like work through what products they may have, like a line of credit or something, to cover some of the working capital costs that you might incur as you're getting things in place to finalize the contract and then begin getting paid. So I think that's about assessing your
Mm,
working capital
yeah.
needs.
You know what just came to mind? Sorry for interrupting.
Now go for it.
I try not to interrupt my guests as much
No,
as I can.
please.
But my question is like, all right, working capital. So do you see that if I go get a line of credit or small business loan, would that incentivize like, me getting the contract versus another contractor? Or is it always just based on like your capability of like performing on a contract?
So it's going to vary, right? It's going to vary
Okay.
by entity. I would say, they certainly uh, weight or evaluate, assess a lot on the past performance of performing on contracts, and an important input on that input on whether or not you can perform is, did you have the capital, right, to, like, there were no financial
Hmm.
disruptions to the work. So it is sort of implicit, but I don't think it's as much of an explicit screen
Like a
when you're
deciding
awarding
factor.
the
Yeah.
yeah. But I think that it's a part of what is your plan to execute, and capital needs to be as at the forefront of how you're thinking about.
Yeah, okay, that I'm glad we're bringing that up because I feel like, someone might be like, okay, I'm gonna go get all these certifications or get, LGBT or small business, minority owned certifications, but if they've never really handled a contract that big or performed on something like that, or have like, because like in my mind, I'm like, okay, you can go get a line of credit once you're awarded a contract, but are you really going to be awarded a contract if you don't have like the experience and the capital behind you to, because there's a lot of upfront costs, obviously,
Yeah.
to any business.
Well, and I think winning a big contract is exciting. But if
Hmm.
your business can't manage the cash flow, the opportunity can become a risk, instead of this thing that
Mm,
is a source of growth. I mean, I've seen, business owners bite off more than they can chew. And because of the natural nature of doing this business, the payment delays or the contract is not complete, that can cause kind of challenges. One of the things that we actually encountered recently is when you're going through the procurement process, especially if you're bidding as a prime, you should look, they put all of the contract documents in the bid that you have to sign in advance. That is also
okay.
your opportunity to go through and understand their obligation to paying, like what is the turnaround time. So you'll that way you can go in eyes wide open if this is a good fit. They will also talk about, terms around, phasing out the contract, closing out the contract. What are the compliance requirements? And really go
Yeah.
through those things. You can also redline certain things that don't work for you. I would highly advise you do it with a lawyer, with an attorney, so that you're asking for something that's actually
Yeah.
feasible. But you can build into some of your agreements, things around expectations of payment. It doesn't necessarily guarantee. I highly doubt that they will do that, but I think you can sort of set expectations. But I would go through the terms, because all of the various terms have a cost attached to it, right?
Yeah.
If they're saying reporting on a monthly basis, make sure your pricing has in it somebody on your team that can pull those reports together. If that takes 5 hours, what's your hourly rate? Like, factor that in. Don't just factor in, how much it costs to, if you are creative, like go back to the choreographer example,
Yeah.
just the cost of paying the dancers and for the studio time. You also need, if there's reports and video that you need to send to say you did, you hit a certain milestone, you need to build that
Right.
into your pricing too.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so yeah, they really need to sign up with you guys to get mentored by you guys because there's so many things that I'm like, I can't even think of all the questions right now, to be honest. I just feel like there's so much unknown, especially or fear and unknown just being like, God, these are like world stage like games, that you're dealing with. But like, even you right now just explaining, being a prime contractor versus a subcontractor, like, where do you actually fit in as a small business, right? Because I think the SBA defines a small business like 500 employees and less. I'm like, that's not small, but In my mind, that's not small, but it's still, even 100-person company is still considered a small business, right? So yeah, capacity, and capital, of course. Well, this is another question I have for you, and probably the last one actually. For business owners listening who want to take action this month, what's the first concrete step they should take to get in the game?
I would say the first concrete step is to sign up for the Resource Hub. I
Okay.
think, I know I threw a lot of information at
Yeah.
you to share with your listeners, and it feels overwhelming. I promise it can be more manageable. It is a lot of information. And so, what is great about the Get in the Game LA Supplier Resource Hub is that it reduces the number of doors you can knock on to get to the right place, to get to the right information that's most relevant for what you're trying to do at that particular point in time or for your long-term growth. And so I think
Mhm.
that's really important. There are lots of workshops and providers that are on the platform that can get you that guidance and get you the information to help you achieve your goals. One of the businesses I wanted to highlight,
Yeah.
Naomi Mendoza, who is the owner of Cordovacus Grill in downtown LA. We had spoken to her at the end of last year and learned that she had inherited her family business, but she
Mm.
didn't know how to access government contracts. And so, with the guidance of her business advisor through Pace LA, who was one of the partners on the
Okay.
platform,
Yeah.
uh, and support from the Get in the Game Supplier Resource Hub, she got her SBE and women owned and minority business owned certifications. And that actually led to contracts feeding disaster relief victims after the LA fires, and also some
Oh
connections
wow.
to the
Yeah.
NBA. The NBA and Global Games networks, and so she's now in the mix for World Cup and the Olympics. And then she has won a 3-year contract feeding seniors as a part of an elderly nutrition program. So yes, you might have a contract
Nice.
for the Olympics, but that leads to bigger opportunities. These that once you kind of are operating and performing at that level, word gets out, relationships get formed, and you can become one of those kind of go-to contractor, sub or prime contractor for all of the various buyers across the region.
All right. Yep. No, I appreciate that. There's so much information that you gave, and that's great resources as well for my listeners. So if someone wants to get in the game, where do they go to sign up? What's the website? And what's the website?
Absolutely. Is www.getinthegamela.com. So that's all you
Okay.
need to do. It's free. So I want to make sure everybody knows it's absolutely free and it's fast and it's easy to use. And so you sign up for your profile and then we'll get you to a business advisor and get you
Okay.
started and
You know what? I
get you
just
in the game.
get you in the game. And you know what? Another question. So, what about like freelancers? Can freelancers get in the game? Or are we just only talking about incorporated businesses here?
It's primarily focused on those that are like formally operating, and so
Okay.
you've got you can be a solopreneur, but have had officially registered business that you're paying taxes under that business entity, and so
Okay.
that's the
Yeah.
primary focus. But certainly, welcome all, and we'll get the those that are not quite the right fit to the right place.
Okay, yeah, and then you guys can get them there as well. And like with all the certifications too, right, that they would need as an individual or a small business as well. But that's what you guys are there to do, to guide them through all that, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let me see. I'm trying to think if I have any other questions for you, Donald. I think you were very thorough. That's why I still got quiet. And I was like, you're providing all the information I
That's
need.
code for I talk too much. I'm sorry.
No, you're
I
good.
can't help it. I get really excited about the topic and
I
wanted to
know
make
you
sure
did.
people,
Uh-huh.
know what they're walking into.
Yes.
Having advised people throughout my career, but also as a small business owner, at Next Street, we're an
Yeah.
employee-owned firm, and I've run into my own, roadblocks and walls, and so
Yeah.
I know the
I
pain
bet.
all too well.
Okay, okay. Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. So a couple years ago when I was still, well, like maybe 10 years ago when I was still working for like employers before I went on my own, I would always and somehow end up speaking to clients that were like, I don't know what he said in there. Like they just came out of those meetings more confused and they were business owners. And I was like, this is interesting. I personally don't like being confused and I need to know like all the information to be able to make the right informed decision, right? And the like proper and legal ones as well. But I also feel like, a lot of a lot of individuals out there starting businesses or freelancing, and they feel lost. A lot of people feel lost. There's not like, yeah, there's like business school, but then that's more theory. That's not business in practice. I
Right.
mean, I have my MBA, so I can speak on that as well. But I think a lot of my business like acumen and knowledge and like wisdom that I have now is based on all these interactions I've had, not only with the businesses I advise, but the freelancers and connecting all the dots. So I appreciate you being thorough. So that's why I was listening, because I know other people would be listening out there too. For now, I guess we're done, but thank you so much for coming on the show, Donald. It's been a pleasure. I'm excited to
Thank you
release the
so much.
episode. Yeah, I'll let you go.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. Please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and share this podcast with your network. Your support helps our Latinx business community grow stronger with every listen, and I truly invite you to connect with us. Send us your questions, your comments, or even your own business stories to randy@rgtaxes.com. I would love to hear from you. Until next time, keep learning, keep building your business, and keep growing your business mindset.